Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back in time, slipping into the quiet rhythms of a 19th century farmhouse. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the flickering lamplight, the scent of wood smoke, the hush of a world before electricity and incessant digital noise. You are there, perched on a worn wooden chair listening. But this isn't just a quiet house. Oh no. This is a symphony of subtle sounds, a tapestry woven from the very fabric of daily life. You might think it is peaceful, but honestly, you probably would not survive 5 minutes without your phone. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you are listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are sitting in the heart of a 19th century farmhouse, and the first thing that strikes you is the deep, pervasive quiet. It is not the manufactured silence of a modern, soundproofed room. This is a living quiet, a quiet that breathes, a quiet brimming with the subtle sounds that our modern ears are often too deafened to perceive. The very structure of the house speaks to you. Listen closely. There is the gentle sigh and creak of the old timbers contracting and expanding with the subtle shifts in temperature. It is a slow, almost melancholic whisper, the house settling into its bones. Think of it as the house's quiet breathing, a steady, ancient rhythm that has been going on for decades, perhaps even centuries. This sound is a constant companion, a comforting reminder of the enduring nature of the dwelling around you. It is a sound that modern homes, with their drywall and synthetic materials, simply cannot replicate. No artificial intelligence is going to give you that kind of natural house hum. Historians still argue whether the perceived quietness of 19th century homes was truly universal, or if it varied significantly based on construction methods, location, and the sheer number of inhabitants. Beyond the structural murmurs, your ear begins to pick up the more immediate, organic sounds of the home. Perhaps it is the soft rustle of straw in a bed ticking upstairs, the gentle shifting of someone asleep, barely audible, like a mouse padding across the floorboards. There might be the very faint drip of water from a well bucket outside, a distant, regular plink that marks the passage of time. Or perhaps it is the lazy buzz of a fly caught between two window panes, a tiny, insistent vibration against the glass. These are the sounds of a house alive, a house interacting with its environment, a house filled with the quiet movements of its inhabitants and the persistent presence of nature. It is a symphony of the subtle, demanding a level of attentiveness that our modern, overstimulated senses have largely forgotten. You are not just hearing, you are truly listening. The lack of electrical appliances means no humming refrigerators, no whirring fans, no distant televisions. This absence of artificial noise creates a vacuum that allows the natural world and the mechanics of human life to fill the auditory landscape. You might hear the soft flapping of a curtain in a slight breeze, a gentle rhythmic thap against the window frame, or the almost imperceptible click of a latch on a door, as if the house itself is adjusting. These are not loud sounds, not attention-grabbing. They are woven into the fabric of the quiet, requiring you to lean in, to open your inner ear to their delicate presence. It is like trying to hear a secret whispered just for you. One mainstream historical fact is that before widespread electrification in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, daily life, particularly in rural areas, was inherently quieter due to the absence of mechanical and electrical noise. Think about the materials around you. The rough texture of wood, the softness of natural fibers, the cool solidity of stone. Each has its own acoustic signature. The soft scrape of a wooden chair leg on a plank floor, a gentle rasp that would be lost in the din of modern life. The rustle of paper as someone turns a page in a book, a crisp, dry sound that seems to echo in the stillness. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some 19th century house designs actually incorporated specific architectural features, such as thick stone walls or layered plaster, not just for insulation but also, incidentally, for their sound dampening qualities, making the interior even more hushed. And then there are the sounds of fire, the very heartbeat of the farmhouse, the gentle crackle and hiss of logs settling in the fireplace, a soft punctuation mark in the quiet. The occasional sigh of air being drawn into the flames, a low, comforting whoosh, the rhythmic tick of a falling ember. These are the sounds of warmth, of sustenance, of the domestic hearth. They are primal sounds, deeply embedded in the human experience, and in this farmhouse, they are amplified by the surrounding quiet. No central heating hums here. No click of a thermostat, just the living breath of fire, providing both heat and a gentle, constant soundscape. It is a quiet world, yes, but far from silent. It is a world where every subtle sound holds meaning, where your ears become attuned to the gentle symphony of life in a bygone era. You are not just observing, you are experiencing, through the delicate dance of sound, the very essence of a 19th century farm life. And it is surprisingly loud, if you just listen with intent. As the day begins to stir in the 19th century farmhouse, the subtle sounds of sleep begin to transition into the gentle stirrings of awakening. The first light filtering through the undraped windows brings with it a new layer of auditory texture. Perhaps you hear the soft, deliberate breathing of someone stirring in their sleep, a deeper, slower rhythm than the gentle rustling from earlier. Then comes the almost imperceptible shift of weight on a mattress, a quiet groan of springs, or the settling of straw as a body begins to prepare for the day. You might then catch the barest hint of a yawn, stifled perhaps, but still creating a subtle intake and release of breath that registers in the quiet space. It's like watching a flower slowly unfurl its petals, but with sound. This quiet awakening is a stark contrast to the jarring alarms and hurried preparations of modern mornings. There is no sudden jolt, no frantic scramble. It is a slow, gradual emergence from slumber, guided by the natural rhythms of light and the body. Historians still argue about the average sleep patterns in 19th century rural households, whether they were consistently segmented or closer to modern monophasic sleep, influenced by agricultural demands and natural light. The first deliberate sounds of the day often come from the kitchen. The soft scrape of a metal pot against a wooden table, a gentle clink that seems to echo in the stillness. The quiet thud of kindling being placed into the stove, followed by the faint crackle of new flames catching, a small but significant burst of sound, signaling the beginning of warmth and food. You might then hear the rhythmic hiss of water beginning to heat on the stove, a slow, building anticipation of morning tea or coffee. These are not loud, intrusive noises. They are domestic sounds, soft and purposeful, woven into the fabric of the waking house. It's a bit like watching a well-practiced dance, where every movement is precise and deliberate. No frantic banging of pots, no impatient sighs. Every action has its own quiet dignity. As family members begin to rise, you might discern the soft padding of bare feet on wooden floorboards, a gentle rhythm that moves through the house like a quiet shadow. The slight rustle of fabric as someone dresses, the quiet snap of a button, the faint creak of a floorboard underfoot. These sounds tell a story of movement, of bodies awakening and preparing for the day's labor, all without words. There is a sense of quiet efficiency in these movements, a practiced routine that has been honed over years of farm life. No one is stumbling over obstacles or frantically searching for lost items. Everything has its place, and every movement is economical. One mainstream historical fact is that communal living spaces and multi-generational households were common in 19th century farmhouses, meaning that even the quietest sounds of one individual's morning could ripple through the entire dwelling. Listen for the outdoor sounds that begin to filter in as the sun rises. The distant crow of a rooster, a surprisingly clear and resonant sound that cuts through the morning air, signaling the true start of the day for the farm. The lowing of cattle from a nearby barn, a deep, resonant rumble that speaks of hungry animals awaiting their morning feed. The soft bleating of sheep, the gentle whicker of a horse. These are the sounds of the farm animals, their own quiet symphony of awakening, inextricably linked to the rhythm of human life in the farmhouse. It is a beautiful, primal connection, a testament to the symbiotic relationship between humans and animals in a bygone era. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm families would purposefully keep specific breeds of noisy fowl, like guinea fowl, as an early warning system against predators or intruders, effectively using their natural alarm calls as a form of audible security. The gentle scrape of a broom on a dirt floor, sweeping away the last traces of nighttime dust. The soft splash of water as someone washes their face in a basin, a refreshing burst of sound. The quiet clatter of a wooden spoon stirring a pot. Every sound has a purpose. Every action is intentional. There is no background music, no constant chatter from a screen. The sounds of the farmhouse are the sounds of purposeful living, of hands working, of bodies moving, of life unfolding in a deeply connected and remarkably quiet way. It is a world where even the smallest auditory detail stands out, demanding your attention, inviting you to listen to the subtle symphony of a 19th century morning. You are not just present, you are profoundly aware, attuned to the quiet pulse of a world long past. It makes you realize how much noise we truly live with now. As the morning progresses in the 19th century farmhouse, the quiet efficiency of dawn gives way to the more active, yet still subtle, sounds of daily chores. The kitchen often remains the auditory heart of the home, alive with the sounds of food preparation. Imagine the rhythmic thud of a wooden rolling pin against a sturdy counter, a soft, percussive beat as dough is flattened for bread or pie crust. It is a sound that speaks of warmth, of impending nourishment, and of practiced hands. You might hear the crisp, tearing sound of cabbage leaves being pulled apart, or the dull thud of potatoes being dropped into a metal pot. These are the sounds of fresh ingredients, raw and earthy, being transformed into meals. Historians still argue about the typical division of labor within 19th century farmhouses, whether culinary tasks were strictly gendered, or if men and children also regularly participated in food preparation. Beyond the kitchen, the sounds of cleaning and maintenance begin to emerge. The gentle swish and scrape of a stiff broom on bare floorboards, a methodical sound that speaks of order and cleanliness. You might hear the soft, rhythmic slap of a rag wiping down a wooden surface, a quiet testament to diligence. The slight clatter of metal pails being moved from one place to another, perhaps from the pump outside to the washing area. These are the sounds of constant upkeep, the tireless effort required to maintain a functional home in a pre-modern era. It is a reminder that daily life was often physically demanding, even within the confines of the house. No robotic vacuums humming along, just good old-fashioned elbow grace, with its own quiet hum. From outside, if a window is open, you might hear the distinct, earthy sound of a pump handle being worked, a rhythmic squeak and splash as water is drawn from the well. This is a sound of vital necessity, of hydration and hygiene, a sound that connects the household directly to the earth beneath it. The quiet groan of a wagon wheel turning in the distance, perhaps carrying produce to market or bringing in new supplies, a faint, rolling rumble that speaks of connection to the wider world beyond the immediate farm. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some ingenious farm families would rig up rudimentary pulley systems or counterweights to their well pumps, subtly altering the usual squeaking sound into a smoother, almost silent operation, a small domestic luxury. The sounds of hand tools also begin to punctuate the morning quiet. The gentle snip of scissors as fabric is cut for mending or sewing, a precise, delicate sound. The rhythmic click of knitting needles, a soft, almost hypnotic cadence that speaks of quiet industry. The subtle scrape of a sharpening stone against a knife blade, a crisp, metallic whisper that indicates preparation for a task. These are the sounds of craftsmanship, of self-sufficiency, of a world where most objects were made, mended, or maintained by hand. Every sound tells a story of purpose and skill. One mainstream historical fact is that textile production, including spinning, weaving, and mending, was a significant domestic industry in 19th century farmhouses, providing clothing and other necessities for the family. Even the sounds of learning or quiet recreation can be heard. The soft rustle of pages being turned in a book, a dry whisper of paper, the gentle scratch of a pen on parchment, a faint rhythmic rasp that speaks of literacy and correspondence. The occasional, quiet hum of a tune, perhaps a folk song or a hymn, softly whistled by someone at work, a momentary break in the focused silence. These are the sounds of inner life, of thought and quiet contemplation, coexisting with the practical demands of the day. So, the 19th century farmhouse, far from being completely silent, is filled with a rich tapestry of subtle sounds in the morning. Each scrape, each rustle, each gentle thud tells a story of labor, of intention, and of the intimate connection between human hands and the physical world. It is a world where every auditory detail holds meaning, where the absence of loud, artificial noise allows the quiet symphony of daily life to truly resonate. You are immersed in this acoustic landscape, listening to the deliberate, purposeful sounds that define a bygone era. It makes you truly appreciate the quiet moments, rather than just filling them with noise. As the mid-morning sun climbs higher, casting long shadows through the farmhouse windows, the rhythm of subtle sounds shifts again, moving from the initial flurry of morning chores to the deeper, more sustained hum of ongoing work. The kitchen might still be active, but now with the sounds of baking. Imagine the gentle clatter of pottery as bowls are moved, followed by the soft, rhythmic slap of bread dough being kneaded. It is a sound that speaks of transformation, of raw ingredients becoming the stuff of life. You might hear the quiet tick of a clock, a grandfather clock in the hall, perhaps its pendulum swinging with a steady, comforting cadence, marking the inexorable passage of time. This is a sound that grounds you, reminding you of the slower pace of life, where time was measured in tasks completed, not minutes rushing by. Historians still argue about the prevalence of personal clocks in 19th century rural homes, whether they were common household items or considered more of a luxury, influencing the perception and organization of daily time. Beyond the kitchen, the sounds of textile work often become more prominent. The rhythmic whir of a spinning wheel, a constant, soothing drone that indicates the transformation of raw wool or flax into thread. The soft click and clack of a loom, a more complex, intricate rhythm as fabric is woven, strand by painstaking strand. These are the sounds of creation, of self-sufficiency, of a world where clothing and linens were made in the home, by hand. You might even hear the gentle scrape of a thimble against fabric, a small, precise sound as someone mends a garment, ensuring its longevity. It is a quiet industry, demanding patience and skill, with its own unique auditory signature. No sound of machines endlessly churning out fast fashion here. Just the slow, deliberate work of human hands, making what is needed. From outside, the sounds of farm work begin to assert themselves more clearly. The distant, steady chop of an axe as firewood is split, a clean, resonant thud that speaks of preparation for the colder months. The gentle jingle of harness bells as a horse is led to pasture or hitched to a plough, a musical, almost charming sound that carries on the breeze. The lowing of cattle, now perhaps closer, as they graze in a nearby field, a deep, contented rumble that speaks of the quiet rhythm of nature. These are the sounds of the agricultural cycle, the constant effort required to coax sustenance from the land. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm animals, particularly cows, were sometimes fitted with small, decorative bells not just to locate them, but also because their gentle tinkling was thought to bring good luck to the farm. Inside the farmhouse, even the sounds of sunlight can be heard. The soft pop and crackle of wood drying in a sunbeam, a tiny, almost imperceptible whisper. The gentle hum of dust motes dancing in the light, a visual phenomenon that, if you listen closely enough, seems to have its own faint, energetic vibration. These are the sounds of the natural world entering the home, of light and warmth transforming the environment. One mainstream historical fact is that natural light was the primary source of illumination in 19th century homes during daylight hours, influencing house design and daily routines. You might also hear the quiet murmur of voices. Not loud conversations, but soft exchanges, instructions given in hushed tones, or perhaps a child softly reciting a lesson. The soft sigh of a broom on a wooden floor, a methodical rhythm. The gentle creak of a door opening and closing, a soft click as the latch settles. Every sound is intentional, a result of human interaction with the physical world. There is a deep respect for quiet, a sense that loud noise is disruptive. The farmhouse encourages a focused, attentive state of being, where the subtle sounds of life are not background noise, but foreground information. It is a world where even the quietest sounds convey meaning, telling a story of sustained effort, domestic industry, and the enduring connection between humans and the natural world. You are immersed in this acoustic landscape, listening to the very pulse of a 19th century day. You are not just a spectator, you are part of the quiet, resonant rhythm of this bygone era. It truly makes you slow down and simply absorb. As the afternoon light mellows and lengthens in the 19th century farmhouse, the sounds shift to reflect a slight easing of the most intense morning labors, moving towards preparatory tasks for the evening and the ongoing hum of maintenance. The kitchen might still offer the gentle scrape of a knife on a wooden cutting board, perhaps preparing vegetables for supper, a soft, precise sound. You might hear the faint bubbling of a pot simmering slowly on the stove, a low, comforting burble that promises warmth and sustenance for the coming meal. This is a subtle yet persistent sound, indicating ongoing domesticity and the slow transformation of ingredients. Historians still argue about the consistency of daily mealtimes in 19th century farmhouses, whether they were strictly adhered to or varied significantly based on the demands of farm work and seasonal changes. Listen closely, and you might detect the delicate whisper of pages turning in a well-loved book. A dry, crisp sound as someone takes a moment for quiet reading in a sunlit corner. The soft scratch of a quill pen on paper, a rhythmic rasp as letters are written or accounts are updated, a sound that speaks of connection to the wider world through correspondence. These are the sounds of intellectual pursuits, quiet moments of reflection, and learning amidst the demanding physical realities of farm life. It is a reminder that even in a world without screens, there were rich inner lives and a dedication to literacy. No digital notifications pinging for attention, just the quiet focus of the written word. From the outbuildings, if a window is open, you might hear the soft, rhythmic clatter of tools in a workshop, perhaps a hammer gently tapping or the low rasp of a saw as someone works on repairs or crafts a new implement. These are the sounds of self-sufficiency, of a community that largely made and mended its own tools and equipment. The distant, almost imperceptible creak of a weather vane turning in a light breeze, a metallic sigh that indicates subtle shifts in the wind. These are the sounds of the farm functioning as an integrated whole, with human ingenuity working in harmony with the natural elements. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm families would craft elaborate, melodically tuned wind chimes from discarded metal objects, subtly altering the ambient outdoor soundscape with their gentle tinkling, a small aesthetic indulgence in a practical world. Inside the house, the sounds of household maintenance continue. The gentle thud of a folded blanket being placed on a chest, a soft, muffled sound. The quiet click of a latch on a cupboard door, followed by the soft rustle of linens or provisions being organized. You might hear the distant, almost ghostly chime of a wind-up clock in another room, its delicate mechanism marking the slow passage of time with a precise, almost fragile sound. These are the sounds of order, of a well-managed household, where every object has its place and every task is completed with deliberate care. One mainstream historical fact is that tidiness and domestic order were highly valued virtues in 19th century farmhouses, reflecting both practical necessity and cultural expectations. As the afternoon wears on, the activity might slowly begin to wind down. The sounds become a little less sharp, a little more diffuse. The hum of the house settling back into its quiet rhythm, preparing for the evening. You might hear the distant cooing of doves from the barn, a soft, repetitive murmur that adds to the peaceful ambience. The occasional, almost imperceptible shift of a cat sleeping by the hearth, a soft stretch and sigh. These are the sounds of life finding its natural balance, of a world moving towards rest after a day of purposeful labor. The quiet of the 19th century farmhouse in the afternoon is not an empty quiet. It is a quiet filled with intention, with the soft whispers of ongoing work, and the gentle anticipation of the evening meal. Every subtle sound contributes to a rich, immersive auditory experience, allowing you to truly feel the presence of a bygone era. You are a silent observer, attuned to the gentle symphony of daily life, recognizing that even the quietest moments hold a profound depth of meaning and purpose. It truly makes you appreciate the slower pace and richer textures of such a life. As evening approaches in the 19th century farmhouse, the sounds begin to draw inward, focusing on the hearth and the gathering of the family. The outdoor world, which punctuated the morning and afternoon with its distant farm sounds, now slowly recedes, replaced by the intimate hum of domesticity. Imagine the soft crackle and pop of a larger log being placed on the fire, a more substantial sound than the earlier kindling, indicating a sustained warmth for the evening ahead. The gentle whoosh of the bellows, coaxing new life into the embers, creates a rhythmic, comforting sigh. This is the heart of the home, both literally and figuratively, providing light, warmth, and the focal point for the family's gathering. Historians still argue whether the evening meal was always the most substantial of the day in 19th century farmhouses, or if eating patterns varied significantly with the season and workload. The kitchen, still warm from the day's cooking, now emits sounds of the evening meal being served. The soft clatter of earthenware plates being set on a wooden table, a gentle dull thud rather than a sharp clink. The rhythmic scrape of a wooden spoon against a pot as stew is ladled out, a comforting, sloshing sound that promises hearty sustenance. You might hear the quiet rustle of cloth napkins being unfolded, a soft whisper of linen. The gentle murmur of voices, now closer, as family members gather, their conversation a low hum interspersed with the quiet chewing of food. No loud clatter of cutlery on porcelain, no blaring television in the background, just the natural sounds of people sharing a meal, their voices blending into the background. It is a simple, unhurried affair, deeply connected to the act of communal sustenance. No hurried grab-and-go meals here, just quiet, intentional eating. Outside, the sounds of twilight begin to dominate. The distant hoot of an owl, a clear, resonant call that cuts through the deepening quiet, signaling the arrival of night creatures. The gentle chirp of crickets from the fields. a constant, pervasive hum that grows louder as the day fades. The soft rustle of leaves on the trees, a barely perceptible whisper as the wind sighs through the branches. These are the sounds of nature settling down, preparing for the darkness, and they frame the warmth and light of the farmhouse within a world of quiet wildness. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm families believed that the hoot of an owl near the house was a harbinger of good luck, or even a sign of approaching visitors, adding a layer of folklore to the natural soundscape. Inside, as the meal concludes, the sounds transition to post-dinner activities. The gentle scraping of plates as they are cleared, followed by the soft splash and gurgle of water being poured into a wash basin. The muffled thud of a damp cloth wiping down surfaces, a quiet testament to domestic order. You might hear the low hum of a spinning wheel picking up again, as someone continues a task by the firelight, perhaps preparing yarn for the next day. One mainstream historical fact is that after dinner hours in 19th century farmhouses were often dedicated to quiet domestic chores, mending, storytelling, or reading by lamplight, reflecting the absence of modern evening entertainment. The focus shifts to storytelling or quiet conversation. The low, steady cadence of a voice reading aloud from a book or the Bible. A comforting, rhythmic sound that fills the quiet room. The occasional soft sigh or murmur of agreement from listeners. The quiet click of knitting needles continuing their rhythmic dance. These are the sounds of shared presence, of family connection, of a slower, more deliberate way of life. The flickering lamplight would cast dancing shadows, adding to the intimate atmosphere, making the sounds feel even more contained and personal. The 19th century farmhouse in the evening is a cocoon of subtle sound, a sanctuary against the encroaching darkness and the wildness of the outside world. Every gentle rustle, every soft murmur, every quiet clatter contributes to a profound sense of peace and domestic harmony. You are immersed in this acoustic warmth, listening to the intimate symphony of life unfolding within these old walls, a stark and beautiful contrast to the hurried, noisy evenings of today. It is a world where every whisper holds meaning, where the quiet is not empty but full of life. You can almost feel the gentle embrace of this bygone era. As night deepens over the 19th century farmhouse, the subtle sounds of evening gradually give way to the profound quiet of a sleeping home. The active sounds of human endeavor diminish, replaced by the hushed whispers of the natural world and the quiet mechanics of the dwelling itself. Imagine the crackling of the last embers in the fireplace, a soft, fading whisper that eventually gives way to the deep, silent warmth of residual heat. The occasional, almost imperceptible creak of the floorboards upstairs as a sleeping body shifts. A gentle settling sound that is barely audible. This is the quietest time, a period of deep rest when the rhythms of daily life pause and the house truly settles. Historians still argue about the consistency of sleep patterns in 19th century farmhouses, whether the absence of artificial light truly led to earlier bedtimes and more fragmented sleep, or if individual variations were more significant. Listen closely, and you might hear the gentle murmur of the wind around the eaves. A soft, sighing sound that seems to embrace the house. The faint tapping of a bare branch against a window pane. A delicate, rhythmic caress that speaks of the unseen world outside. The distant, continuous drone of crickets from the fields. A pervasive hum that seems to fill the void left by human activity. These are the sounds of the night. A symphony of natural quiet that reminds you of the farmhouse's deep connection to the land and the elements. No constant hum of electricity, no distant traffic noise. Just the pure, unadulterated sounds of nature in all its subtle power. It makes you realize how much background noise we simply filter out in our modern lives. Inside, the sounds are even more intimate. The soft, regular tick of a grandfather clock in the hall, its steady beat a comforting, unwavering pulse in the darkness. It is a reminder of enduring time, of the quiet passage of hours even as the world sleeps. You might hear the very faint drip of condensation from a cold window pane, a delicate, almost musical plink that punctuates the stillness. These are the sounds of the house itself, reacting to the cold night, its ancient materials contracting and expanding with barely audible sighs. One mainstream historical fact is that privacy in 19th century farmhouses was often limited, with multiple family members or even generations sharing rooms, meaning that the sounds of individual sleep were a communal experience. The breathing of those asleep becomes more noticeable in the quiet. The soft, rhythmic intake and exhalation of air, a gentle, comforting sound that speaks of peaceful slumber. Perhaps a slight snore from a deeper sleeper, a low, rumbling sound that quickly fades back into the quiet. The occasional, quiet rustle of bedding as someone shifts. A soft whisper of fabric. These are the intimate sounds of human presence, hushed and vulnerable in the darkness, yet profoundly comforting in their regularity. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm families would purposefully hang small bags of dried herbs, like lavender or hops, near their beds, not just for fragrance, but also for their purported sleep-inducing qualities, subtly altering the sensory experience of rest. The profound darkness, unbroken by artificial light, would also amplify the sense of hearing. Every subtle sound, no matter how faint, would stand out with remarkable clarity. The scuttle of a mouse in the walls, a quick, light scratching that would be barely noticeable during the day, now becomes a distinct punctuation mark in the silence. The faint creak of a door that has not been properly latched. A ghostly sigh in the depths of the night. These are the sounds of the unseen, of the creatures that share the dwelling, and they add a layer of quiet mystery to the sleeping farmhouse. The 19th century farmhouse at night is a world of deep, resonant quiet, a symphony of subtle sounds that are both intimate and expansive. It is a world where the natural rhythms of life and the gentle mechanics of the dwelling conspire to create a profound sense of peace. You are enveloped in this acoustic stillness, listening to the whispers of a bygone era, a world where the absence of manufactured noise allowed the delicate sounds of existence to truly resonate. It is a powerful reminder of how much we miss in our noisy, modern lives, and how much richness can be found in simply listening to the quiet. You are not just observing, you are experiencing the deep, restful hush of a world long past. Let's extend our auditory journey into the less visible, but equally resonant world of the farmhouse's exterior, focusing on the sounds that define the immediate surroundings and the farmyard. Stepping just outside the front door, you immediately notice a shift in the acoustic landscape. The dominant sounds are no longer contained within the walls, but rather diffuse, emanating from the various outbuildings and the natural environment. Imagine the constant, gentle clucking of chickens from the coop, a low, murmuring chorus that punctuates the air, occasionally broken by a sharper squawk or the flutter of wings. This is the background music of the farmyard, a living, breathing sound that speaks of eggs and daily routines. Historians still argue about the typical number and variety of livestock kept on a 19th century family farm, whether specialization was common or if most farms maintained a diverse range of animals for self-sufficiency. Beyond the poultry, listen for the deeper, more resonant sounds of larger animals. The soft lowing of cows from the barn, a deep, contented rumble that carries on the breeze, perhaps accompanied by the gentle chewing of cud, the quiet bleating of sheep from a nearby pasture, a softer, more plaintive sound. The occasional whicker or snort of a horse from the stable, a gentle, almost human sound that speaks of warmth and companionship. These are the voices of the farm's working animals, their presence a constant reminder of the physical labor that underpins farm life. They are not just silent resources, they are living beings whose sounds are woven into the very fabric of the farm's existence. You might even hear the gentle buzzes of a bee passing by, a tiny, industrious sound that speaks of the natural world hard at work. The sounds of human interaction with these animals are also distinct. The soft rustle of straw as fresh bedding is spread in a stall, a dry, airy whisper. The rhythmic clatter of a metal pail as feed is poured into a trough, a sharp, metallic sound that quickly gives way to the contented slurping of hungry animals. The gentle swish of a brush against a horse's coat, a soft, almost therapeutic sound that speaks of care and connection. These are the sounds of daily husbandry, the constant work involved in nurturing and maintaining the livestock that provides sustenance and labor. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm families would name their most vocal animals, particularly cows or pigs, and would even claim to understand the subtle nuances of their grunts or moose, treating them almost as conversational partners. The natural sounds of the outdoor environment are also amplified here. The rustle of dry leaves underfoot as you walk through the yard, a crisp, earthy sound. The gentle creak and groan of an old wooden fence in the breeze, a sighing protest against its age. The distant, almost ethereal whistle of the wind through tall grass in a nearby field, a lonely, pervasive hum that speaks of open spaces. These are the sounds of nature interacting directly with the man-made structures of the farm, a blend of wildness and domestication. One mainstream historical fact is that farmhouses and their associated outbuildings were often constructed from locally sourced materials like wood and stone, which contributed to their natural integration into the landscape and their unique acoustic properties. Even the sounds of weather are different outdoors. The soft patter of rain on a tin roof, a gentle, rhythmic drumming that speaks of refreshment and growth. The distant rumble of thunder on the horizon, a deep, resonant growl that warns of approaching storms. The sharp snap of a flagpole rope against its wooden mast in a strong wind, a precise, almost violent punctuation mark in the air. These are the unadulterated sounds of the elements, reminding you of the farmer's constant reliance on, and vulnerability to, nature's whims. The exterior of a 19th century farmhouse is a vibrant tapestry of subtle sounds, a living soundscape that speaks of the intimate connection between human life, animal life, and the natural world. Every cluck, every low, every rustle tells a story of purpose, of cyclical rhythms, and of the profound quiet that allows such delicate sounds to truly resonate. You are immersed in this acoustic landscape, attuned to the gentle symphony of farm life, realizing that even the seemingly empty spaces between the house and the barn are filled with a profound and subtle chorus. It makes you realize how much we miss in our busy modern lives. Let's shift our focus to the less obvious, but equally significant sounds that emanate from the tools and machinery, however rudimentary, used on a 19th century farm. These are the sounds of human ingenuity and hard work, often mechanical and repetitive, forming a rhythmic backdrop to daily life. Imagine the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer on an anvil from a distant shed, a sharp, resonant stripe that carries clearly on the air, followed by the softer sizzle of hot metal being quenched. This is the sound of creation, of repair, of the constant maintenance required to keep the farm running. It speaks of heat, of strength, and of the vital importance of tools. Historians still argue about the prevalence of personal blacksmithing capabilities on 19th century farms, whether most farmers could perform basic repairs, or if they relied heavily on itinerant blacksmiths. As agricultural season progresses, you might hear the distinct, whirring sound of a hand-cranked thresher from the barn, a rhythmic, almost grinding noise as grain is separated from chaff. It is a sound of harvest, of sustenance, of the culmination of months of labor. The rhythmic swish of a scythe through tall grass in a nearby field, a gentle but purposeful sound that speaks of haymaking and the gathering of fodder. The sharp click of a hand pump as water is drawn, a sound we've heard, but now perhaps louder and more frequent as animals are watered and crops are tended. These are the sounds of the farm at work, the mechanics of daily survival given voice. No roaring tractors or combine harvesters, just the precise human-powered rhythms of simple machines, working in harmony with the land. Inside the farmhouse, the tools of domesticity have their own subtle sounds. The rhythmic click of a spinning wheel, a constant, low whir that can become almost hypnotic, speaking of endless hours spent transforming raw fibers into thread. The gentle thud and whir of a butter churn, a steady, percussive rhythm that promises fresh dairy. The delicate scrape of a sharpening steel against a kitchen knife, a soft, metallic whisper that speaks of keen edges and efficient preparation. These are the sounds of hands-on craftsmanship, of the direct connection between human effort and the creation of household necessities. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some ingenious farm wives would attach small bells or even musical chimes to their spinning wheels, transforming the rhythmic sound of their labor into a gentle, personal melody. Beyond the specific tools, the sounds of transport are also present. The distant, rumbling creak of a farm wagon carrying produce or supplies, its wooden wheels protesting gently against the uneven ground. The soft jingle of harness bells on a horse as it moves purposefully, a gentle, metallic melody that speaks of steady work. The slap of reins against leather as a driver guides the team, a subtle but precise sound of control. These are the sounds of connection, of the farm reaching out to the wider world, and of goods moving through the landscape. One mainstream historical fact is that horsepower, specifically horses and oxen, was the primary source of motive power for agricultural work and transport in the 19th century, making their sounds integral to the farm environment. Even the sounds of mending and repair hold a mechanical quality. The soft click of a needle pushing through thick fabric, followed by the gentle pull of thread. The precise snip of wire cutters, a sharp, decisive sound as a fence is mended. The dull thud of a mallet hitting a wooden peg, securing a loose joint. These are the sounds of resilience, of making things last, of a world where objects were valued and repaired rather than simply discarded. The 19th century farmhouse, far from being a silent idyll, is filled with the subtle but pervasive sounds of human ingenuity and mechanical effort. Every click, every clack, every whir and clang tells a story of purposeful work, of self-sufficiency, and of the intimate relationship between humans and the simple machines that enabled their survival. You are immersed in this acoustic landscape, listening to the rhythmic symphony of tools and tasks, realizing that these subtle sounds are the very pulse of a working farm in a bygone era. It truly makes you appreciate the hands-on nature of their existence. Let's immerse ourselves now in the nocturnal symphony of the 19th century farmhouse, a time when human sounds recede and the natural world reclaims its auditory dominance, often with surprising clarity. As the last lamplight gutters and the house settles into its deepest sleep, the outside world begins to sing its quiet, nocturnal chorus. Imagine the pervasive, almost hypnotic drone of crickets, a constant, high-pitched hum that fills the air from every direction, punctuated by the occasional sharper chirp. This is the background white noise of the 19th century night, a comforting blanket of sound that paradoxically highlights the silence it fills. It is a sound that speaks of summer evenings, of warm air, and of the ceaseless activity of the insect world. Historians still argue whether the natural nighttime soundscape was genuinely more prominent for 19th century inhabitants, or if our modern ears, accustomed to constant artificial noise, simply filter out these subtle elements. Above the cricket chorus, listen for the clear, resonant hoot of an owl from a distant tree, a stately, almost mournful call that echoes across the fields. The rustle of unseen leaves as a nocturnal animal, perhaps a fox or a rabbit, moves through the undergrowth, a soft, stealthy whisper that speaks of the wildness just beyond the farm's cultivated edges. The faint splash of water in a pond or stream, disturbed by a nocturnal visitor, a delicate plink that breaks the stillness. These are the sounds of the nocturnal ecosystem, the subtle movements of creatures that emerge under the cloak of darkness. No distant sirens or car alarms here, just the pure, unadulterated sounds of nature, in its most intimate and mysterious form. It reminds you how deeply connected these lives were to the natural world around them. The wind plays a different tune at night. It might be the gentle sighing around the eaves of the farmhouse, a low, continuous murmur that suggests a soft breath, or, if the wind picks up, the distinct whistle of air through the cracks of a window frame, a thin, plaintive sound that can sometimes feel almost ghostly. The subtle creak and groan of the old timber frame of the house, now more pronounced in the profound stillness, as the wood contracts in the cooler night air, a soft, ancient protest. These are the sounds of the dwelling itself, breathing and settling, a living entity that shares your sleep. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm families would listen intently to the direction and sound of the night wind, believing it could predict the next day's weather or even bring omens of distant events. Inside the farmhouse, the sounds become almost microscopic. The gentle click of a settling floorboard, a slight pressure change causing a subtle shift. The rhythmic, soft ticking of a clock, its steady heartbeat amplified in the absolute quiet. The barely perceptible breathing of those asleep in their beds, a reassuring intake and release of air that tells you are not alone in the vast stillness. Perhaps a quiet sigh from a sleeping child, a soft, innocent sound. These are the intimate sounds of human presence, hushed and vulnerable in the darkness, yet profoundly comforting in their regularity. One mainstream historical fact is that in the absence of electricity, ambient noise levels in 19th century homes would have been significantly lower than modern environments, making even subtle internal sounds more noticeable. The darkness itself seems to amplify hearing, making every faint sound stand out with remarkable clarity. The tiny scuttle of a mouse in the walls, a quick, light scratching that would be utterly lost in the daytime din, now a distinct punctuation mark in the silence. The faint drip of a leaky roof, a repetitive plink that can feel surprisingly loud in the stillness. These are the sounds of the unseen, the quiet activity that continues even as the human world sleeps. The 19th century farmhouse at night is a symphony of profound quiet, a tapestry woven from the subtle sounds of the natural world and the hushed whispers of the dwelling itself. It is a world where every rustle, every chirp, every gentle sigh contributes to a remarkable sense of peace and deep connection to the rhythms of the earth. You are enveloped in this acoustic stillness, listening to the secrets of a bygone era, a world where the absence of manufactured noise allowed the delicate sounds of existence to truly resonate. It is a powerful reminder of how much richness can be found in simply listening to the quiet, a gift for your sleep tonight. Let's now consider the subtle sounds of the farmhouse kitchen, a space that was arguably the most consistently active and orally rich environment within the 19th century home. Imagine stepping into this hub of activity, where every action produced a distinct, quiet sound. The rhythmic scrape of a wooden spoon against the inside of a cast iron pot as a meal is stirred, a low, resonant rumble that speaks of simmering stews or boiling grains. The soft hiss and pop of water bubbling on a hot stove, a comforting, continuous sound that indicates warmth and preparation. These are the very heartbeat of the kitchen, signaling the creation of sustenance. Historians still argue about the typical size and layout of 19th century farmhouse kitchens. Whether they were consistently the largest room or varied significantly based on regional architectural styles and family size. The preparation of food involved a multitude of delicate sounds. The dull thud of a knife chopping vegetables on a thick wooden block, a rhythmic, satisfying percussion. The crisp tearing sound of fresh greens being pulled apart, a dry, almost fragile whisper. The gentle clatter of earthenware bowls being moved, a duller, more earthy sound than modern ceramics. The soft gurgle of water being poured from a pitcher into a basin for washing vegetables or hands. These are the sounds of raw ingredients being transformed, of hands working with purpose and skill, creating meals from scratch. No whirring blenders or beeping microwaves here. Just the honest, unadorned sounds of manual food preparation. It is a very hands-on approach to cooking. Baking, a frequent activity, brought its own particular sounds. The rhythmic sigh of a wooden rolling pin as dough is flattened, a soft, pervasive whoosh. The delicate sprinkle of flour on a counter, a faint, almost invisible whisper. The soft thud of a loaf of bread being placed into a warm oven, a muted sound of anticipation. The quiet hiss of steam escaping from the oven door, a gentle release of built-up pressure. These are the sounds of creation, of warmth, and of the foundational importance of bread in the 19th century diet. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm wives would hum or sing specific folk tunes while kneading bread, believing the vibrations, or the joyous energy, would help the dough rise more effectively. Even the cleaning of the kitchen held a symphony of subtle sounds. The soft splash and gurgle of water in a wooden wash tub as dishes are cleaned, followed by the gentle clink of metal against wood. The rhythmic squeak of a damp cloth wiping down a worn wooden table, a purposeful, almost scrubbing sound. The quiet snap of a dish towel being folded, a crisp, dry whisper. These are the sounds of constant upkeep, of diligence, of a never-ending cycle of order. One mainstream historical fact is that water had to be manually fetched and heated for all domestic tasks in 19th century farmhouses, making water-related sounds like splashing and pouring a constant presence. Beyond the work, the kitchen was also a place of gathering and quiet conversation. The low murmur of voices, a background hum of familial connection, the soft scrape of a chair being pulled across the floor, a gentle rasp that speaks of people settling in. The occasional, quiet sigh of contentment after a satisfying meal. These are the sounds of shared life, of community, of the simple pleasures found in shared space and sustenance. The 19th century farmhouse kitchen was a vibrant, yet subtly acoustic environment, a place where every action contributed to a rich tapestry of sound. It was a space defined by purposeful labor, by the transformation of raw materials into nourishment, and by the quiet rhythms of family life. You are immersed in this auditory richness, listening to the delicate symphony of creation and sustenance, realizing that even in the absence of modern technology, a profound depth of sound filled the very heart of the home. It makes you realize how much noise we add to our kitchens today. Let's venture beyond the main living spaces and tune into the subtle sounds of the bedrooms in a 19th century farmhouse. Spaces often dedicated to quiet repose, personal reflection, and the hushed rhythms of sleep and awakening. Imagine stepping into a bedroom where the air itself seems to hold a deeper stillness. The dominant sounds here are often those of the body and the elements. You might hear the gentle, rhythmic intake and exhalation of breath from a sleeping person, a soft, steady sigh that speaks of peaceful slumber. This is perhaps the most intimate and universal sound of human presence, quiet and vulnerable. Historians still argue about the average bedroom occupancy in 19th century farmhouses, whether it was common for multiple siblings or even entire families to share a single room, influencing the density of human sounds. As light filters through the windows, you might catch the subtle creak of the bed frame as someone shifts, a gentle protest from old wood or ropes supporting the mattress. The soft rustle of straw or feather filling within the bed ticking, a whispery sound that accompanies every movement. The delicate brushing of a curtain against the windowsill in a light breeze, a rhythmic pat that sounds almost like a gentle tap. These are the sounds of the room itself, interacting with its inhabitants and the subtle forces of nature. No whirring air conditioners or electric heaters, just the natural interactions of materials and air. It makes you feel very connected to the house itself. In the morning, the sounds of quiet dressing emerge. The soft rustle of fabric as clothing is pulled on, a gentle whisper of cotton or wool. The quiet snap of a button being fastened, a precise, small click. The muffled thud of bare feet on a wooden floor, a soft, padded sound that speaks of careful movement to avoid disturbing others. These are the sounds of private ritual, of personal preparation, all conducted with a remarkable sense of quiet efficiency in a shared space. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm families would keep small, flat stones or heated bricks wrapped in cloth in their beds during cold winter nights, and the sounds of these objects being placed or shifted would become a familiar, comforting part of the bedtime routine. The sounds of personal care would also be present. The soft gurgle of water being poured from a pitcher into a wash basin, followed by the gentle splash of hands and face being washed. The quiet scrape of a comb through hair, a gentle, almost meditative sound. These are the sounds of hygiene, of self-maintenance, stripped down to their most basic elements. One mainstream historical fact is that personal hygiene in 19th century farmhouses was often conducted with limited running water, typically involving pitchers and basins, making the sounds of water manipulation a regular occurrence. Even the silence of the bedroom is distinct. It is a deep, profound quiet, often broken only by the sounds of the house settling or the faint, distant sounds of the outside world. The gentle hum of dust motes dancing in a sunbeam, a visual phenomenon that, if you listen closely, seems to have its own faint, energetic vibration. The subtle creak of a door that has not been properly latched, a ghostly sigh in the stillness. These are the sounds of the unseen, of the tiny movements and interactions that occur even in the most peaceful of spaces. The 19th century farmhouse bedroom, while seemingly a bastion of silence, is in fact a canvas for a rich tapestry of subtle sounds. Every gentle breath, every soft rustle, every quiet creak contributes to a profound sense of intimacy and repose. You are a silent observer, attuned to the delicate symphony of private moments, realizing that even in the quietest corners of the home, life hums with its own unique, hushed melody. It reminds you how deeply personal and vulnerable the sounds of sleep can be. Let's extend our auditory journey beyond the immediate confines of the farmhouse and explore the sounds of the land and agriculture that directly influenced life within its walls. These are the pervasive, outdoor sounds that framed the farmhouse's existence, connecting its inhabitants directly to the rhythms of the earth and the seasons. Imagine the distant, rhythmic hum of a threshing machine in late summer or early autumn, a powerful, almost mechanical drone that carries across the fields, signaling the crucial process of harvest. It is a sound of bounty, of hard work, and of the culmination of the agricultural year. This is a sound that would penetrate the farmhouse, a constant reminder of the farm's core purpose. Historians still argue about the speed of adoption of early mechanized farm equipment, like threshers in different regions of the 19th century. Whether it was uniform or varied greatly based on economic factors and local traditions. Beyond the machinery, listen for the sounds of animal husbandry on a grander scale. The distant lowing of an entire herd of cattle being moved, a deep, resonant chorus that echoes across the valleys. The collective bleating of a flock of sheep, a softer, more pervasive murmur. The whinny and neigh of horses from distant pastures, a clear, resonant call that speaks of wildness and freedom. These are the sounds of the farm's capital, its living assets, their movements and voices directly linked to the family's livelihood. You might hear the gentle jingle of cowbells from grazing animals, a melodic, pastoral sound that drifts on the breeze. The sounds of cultivation are also omnipresent. The rhythmic scrape of a plough blade turning earth, a deep, earthy rumble that speaks of preparation and renewal. The gentle splash of water as a farmer irrigates a field, a soft, flowing sound that promises growth and abundance. The distant, almost ethereal rustle of ripening grain in a field, a whispery sound that indicates the impending harvest. These are the sounds of human effort shaping the land, of ancient practices yielding modern sustenance. No gigantic modern farming equipment, just the direct, intimate sounds of human and animal power. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some 19th century farmers would listen to the specific patterns of birdsong and insect sounds before planting, believing these natural cues offered subtle predictions about weather patterns or pest infestations. Even the weather takes on a different auditory character when filtered through the landscape. The distant rumble of thunder, a deep, resonating growl that rolls across the plains, warning of approaching storms. The soft patter of rain on the vast expanse of fields, a pervasive, gentle drumming that speaks of nourishment. The mournful howl of the wind through leafless trees in winter, a desolate, yet powerful sound that speaks of nature's raw force. These are the unadulterated sounds of the elements, reminding you of the farmer's constant reliance on, and vulnerability to, nature's whims. One mainstream historical fact is that 19th century agriculture was almost entirely dependent on weather patterns, making meteorological phenomena a constant and often anxious focus for farm families. The sounds of the landscape itself are also subtle but profound. The gentle rush of a nearby stream or river, a continuous, soothing murmur that blends into the background. The distant caw of a crow, a sharp, distinct call that punctuates the quiet. The chirping of countless insects, a pervasive hum that forms the baseline of the outdoor soundscape. These are the sounds of the natural world, untamed and endlessly vibrant, existing in harmony, or sometimes in opposition, to the human efforts of the farm. The 19th century farmhouse was not an isolated entity, but rather an integral part of a vast, living agricultural soundscape. Every distant rumble, every animal call, every whisper of the wind contributed to a profound sense of connection to the land and its cycles. You are immersed in this acoustic tapestry, listening to the subtle symphony of human labor and natural forces, realizing that the sounds of the farm itself were the very heartbeat of life in a bygone era. It makes you feel very much a part of the earth and its slow, deliberate movements. Let's explore the often overlooked but pervasive sounds of textiles and clothing within a 19th century farmhouse, a realm of subtle rustles, gentle clicks, and rhythmic hums that underscored the constant process of creation, mending, and wear. Imagine the rhythmic whir of a spinning wheel, a consistent, almost meditative drone that fills a corner of the main living space, or a dedicated workroom. This is the sound of raw wool or flax being transformed into thread, a quiet testament to tireless hands. You might hear the soft, repetitive click and clack of a loom, a more complex rhythm as individual threads are woven together, building fabric one painstaking row at a time. These are the sounds of self-sufficiency, of a world where garments and linens were not bought ready-made, but crafted with skill and immense effort. Historians still argue about the exact prevalence of home weaving versus purchased cloth in 19th century farmhouses, whether it was a universal practice or a more specialized skill, varying by region and economic status. Beyond the creation, the sounds of mending and upkeep were constant. The gentle snip of scissors cutting fabric, a precise, delicate sound. The soft scrape of a thimble against cloth as a needle is pushed through, a small, rhythmic whisper. The quiet pull of thread as a stitch is tightened, a barely audible tension. You might hear the crisp snap of a fresh piece of fabric being unfolded, a dry, airy sound. These are the sounds of longevity, of making do, of a culture that valued repair and preservation over constant replacement. No fast fashion, no disposable clothing. Just the careful, deliberate work of extending the life of every garment. It's a very mindful way of living. Even the clothing itself produced subtle sounds as people moved through the house. The soft rustle of skirts as someone walks by, a gentle swish of cotton or wool. The quiet creak of leather boots on floorboards, a distinct, muffled thud. The faint clink of buttons or buckles as garments shift, tiny metallic punctuations in the quiet. These are the sounds of bodies moving, of everyday attire interacting with the environment, a constant, subtle reminder of human presence. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm families would use different types of natural dyes that produced subtle acoustic properties when the fabric was moved, creating unique rustling sounds for different garments. This is highly speculative, of course, but it adds a fun layer to the auditory imagination. The sounds of laundering were also distinct. The soft splash and slap of fabric being agitated in a wash tub, a rhythmic, wet sound that speaks of cleanliness and hard work. The gentle drip of water from hung clothes as they dry, a slow, methodical plink that punctuates the air. The faint flapping of linens on a clothesline in the breeze, a soft, rhythmic that carries on the wind. These are the sounds of a perpetual cycle, of constant effort to maintain hygiene and comfort in a world without modern conveniences. One mainstream historical fact is that laundering clothes was a physically demanding and time-consuming chore in 19th century farmhouses, typically done by hand with minimal equipment. Even the storage of textiles had its own quiet soundtrack. The soft rustle of neatly folded linens being placed in a wooden chest, a dry, airy sound. The gentle click of a cupboard door closing, sealing away the fabric. These are the sounds of order, of a well-managed household, where every textile, from blankets to shirts, was carefully maintained and stored. The 19th century farmhouse was permeated by the subtle sounds of textiles, a continuous symphony of creation, mending, and wear. Every wear, every click, every rustle told a story of human ingenuity, diligent labor, and the intimate connection between everyday objects and the human body. You are immersed in this acoustic landscape, listening to the delicate symphony of fabric and thread, realizing that even the quietest rustle held a profound depth of meaning and purpose in a bygone era. It makes you realize how much work went into every single item of clothing. Let's now tune into the subtle, yet distinct, sounds of the household tools and objects that permeated daily life in a 19th century farmhouse. These are the individual voices of the utilitarian items that filled the home, each contributing to the overall acoustic tapestry of the dwelling. Imagine the soft scrape of a wooden spoon against the side of a mixing bowl, a dull, earthy sound that speaks of preparing food from scratch. The gentle thud of a wooden lid being placed on a crock or pot, a soft, muffled punctuation mark in the quiet kitchen. These are the sounds of hands at work, of the constant interaction between human intention and the physical world. Historians still argue about the material prevalence of specific household items in 19th century farmhouses, whether wood, ceramic, or early forms of metalware dominated the kitchen and daily use. Beyond the kitchen, listen for the sounds of other domestic tools. The rhythmic click of knitting needles, a soft, almost hypnotic cadence that speaks of quiet industry and the creation of warm garments. The delicate snip of scissors as thread is cut for mending, a precise, tiny sound. The gentle scrape of a feather quill on paper, a faint, rhythmic rasp as letters are written or accounts are kept, a sound that connects the domestic sphere to the wider world of literacy and communication. These are the sounds of purposeful activity, of self-sufficiency, of a world where objects were valued for their utility and made to last. No buzzing of electric toothbrushes or the hum of digital clocks. Just the direct, unadorned sounds of manual tools. Even the sounds of opening and closing objects have their own subtle character. The soft creak of a wooden door on its hinges, followed by the quiet click of its latch settling into place. The gentle thud of a chest lid being lowered, a muffled sound that speaks of storage and organization. The delicate rattle of glassware as it is carefully placed in a cupboard, a fragile, almost musical shimmer. These are the sounds of a house in constant use, its components interacting with the hands that operate them. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some ingenious farm families would lubricate squeaky hinges with rendered animal fat, subtly altering the usual protesting creak into a smoother, almost silent movement, a small domestic hack. The absence of modern powered tools means every sound of work is intimately tied to human effort. The quiet whir of a hand-cranked coffee grinder, a rhythmic, slightly grating sound that promises the rich aroma of morning brew. The gentle hiss of a flat iron being tested on a damp cloth, a delicate release of steam as laundry is pressed smooth. The soft slap of a broom on a bare floor, a rhythmic swish that speaks of continuous cleaning and order. These are the sounds of diligence, of constant upkeep, of the physical demands of maintaining a home in a pre-modern era. One mainstream historical fact is that daily household chores in 19th century farmhouses were highly labor-intensive, requiring the use of numerous hand tools and traditional methods. Even the sounds of leisure and quiet recreation have their own subtle presence. The gentle rustle of newspaper pages being turned, a dry, crisp sound. The soft plink of a musical instrument, perhaps a banjo or a harmonica, being gently plucked or blown, a fleeting melody in the quiet. These are the sounds of respite, of personal enjoyment woven into the fabric of a demanding life. The 19th century farmhouse was a symphony of subtle sounds, a harmonious chorus of human interaction with countless household objects and tools. Every scrape, every click, every rustle told a story of purposeful living, of self-sufficiency, and of the intimate connection between human hands and the physical world. You are immersed in this acoustic landscape, listening to the delicate symphony of daily life. realizing that even the quietest sounds held a profound depth of meaning and purpose in a bygone era. It makes you feel very connected to the simple things in life. Let's imagine the subtle sounds of light and shadow shifting within the 19th century farmhouse, an auditory experience that often goes unnoticed but profoundly shaped the sensory environment. In a world without electric light, the sun and the moon were the primary sources of illumination, and their movements created their own quiet soundscapes. Imagine the very faint pop and crackle of wood in a sunbeam, a tiny, almost imperceptible whisper, as the wood dries or expands slightly under the warmth. The gentle hum of dust motes dancing in a shaft of sunlight, a visual phenomenon that, if you listen closely enough, seems to have its own faint, energetic vibration, a silent, swirling dance that only the truly quiet can hear. These are the sounds of light itself, entering and interacting with the static objects of the home. Historians still argue about the average number and size of windows in 19th century farmhouses, whether they were consistently small for insulation or varied greatly based on regional architectural styles and the availability of glass. As shadows lengthen and deepen in the afternoon, you might notice a change in the acoustic properties of the room. The air can feel heavier, the sounds more contained. The faint sigh of a curtain as a gentle breeze pushes it against the window frame, a soft, rhythmic pat that seems amplified by the encroaching twilight. The subtle creak of the house settling as the temperature drops, a deep, resonant sigh that speaks of ancient timbers. These are the sounds of the day slowly giving way to night, of light withdrawing and shadow taking hold, creating a subtle shift in the auditory texture of the space. No bright LED lights to blast away the natural darkness. Just the slow, graceful dance of light and shadow with its own quiet melody. At night, under the soft glow of lamplight or candlelight, the sounds become even more intimate and localized. The gentle flicker and hiss of a candle flame, a tiny, persistent whisper that accompanies its dancing light. The soft crackle of a wick burning down, a delicate punctuation mark in the quiet. The faint shimmer of glass as a lamp chimney reflects the light, a barely audible vibration that adds to the visual warmth. These are the sounds of artificial illumination, created by human hands, casting their gentle glow and their own quiet auditory presence. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm families would try to predict the longevity of a candle by listening to the intensity of its flame hiss, believing a louder hiss indicated a faster burn. When the lamplight is extinguished and the house plunges into profound darkness, the sounds of the natural world become even more prominent. The distant hoot of an owl, a sharp, resonant call that cuts through the stillness, unmuted by competing light. The rhythmic chirp of crickets, a pervasive hum that seems to fill the void, now even clearer and more insistent. The rustle of unseen animals outside, a subtle whisper that speaks of the wildness beyond the walls. These are the sounds that reveal themselves when the visual sense is minimized, allowing the auditory to truly take over. One mainstream historical fact is that 19th century rural homes relied on natural light during the day and firelight or oil lamps at night, leading to distinct daily and nightly light cycles. Even the silence in the darkness has its own sound. It is a dense, velvety quiet, broken only by the most subtle of noises. The gentle shifting of air currents within the room, a barely perceptible whisper. The faint creak of a floorboard under its own weight as the temperature cools. These are the sounds of deep quiet, of a world at rest, allowing you to hear the very fabric of stillness. The 19th century farmhouse, in its reliance on natural light, offered a unique auditory experience defined by the subtle sounds of light and shadow. Every faint crackle, every gentle hum, every rustle of a curtain contributed to a profound sense of natural rhythm and an intimate connection to the environment. You are immersed in this acoustic landscape, listening to the delicate symphony of changing light, realizing that even the most seemingly silent phenomena held a profound depth of meaning and purpose in a bygone era. It makes you realize how much visual noise we have in our modern lives. Let's now consider the subtle, yet ever-present, sounds of temperature change within the 19th century farmhouse, an acoustic phenomenon deeply tied to the natural world and the very structure of the building. Imagine the profound silence of a cold winter morning, just before the fire is lit. The air itself feels crisp, and any sound seems to carry with a sharp clarity. You might hear the faint, almost crystalline ping of ice forming on the outside of a window pane, a delicate, ephemeral sound that speaks of freezing temperatures. The subtle creak of the old timbers, now more pronounced as the wood contracts in the intense cold, a deep, resonant sigh that seems to permeate the very bones of the house. Historians still argue about the effectiveness of insulation in 19th century farmhouses. Whether thick stone walls and rudimentary layering provided adequate warmth, or if drafts and cold spots were a constant battle. As the fire is lit and the warmth begins to spread, a new symphony of sounds emerges. The gentle crackle and pop of logs settling in the fireplace, initially sharp, then softening into a rhythmic comfort. The subtle sigh of air being drawn into the flames, a low, consistent whoosh that indicates the growing heat. You might hear the very faint, rhythmic expansion of the stovepipe as it heats up, a series of tiny, almost imperceptible clicks or pings that speak of metal warming. These are the sounds of comfort being created, of human intervention battling the elements, bringing a sense of domesticity to the cold. No whirring furnaces or blowing vents, just the primal, living sounds of fire and heat. It is a very tangible warmth with its own unique sound. In contrast, consider the sounds of a hot summer day. The air might hum with the distant buzz of insects, amplified by the heat. Inside, the sounds might become slightly muffled, the air thick with warmth. You might hear the gentle creak of a wooden floorboard as it expands in the heat, a slower, more deliberate sound than its cold counterpart. The soft flapping of a curtain in a gentle breeze, a rhythmic thap that speaks of open windows and attempts to circulate air. The distant, almost imperceptible groan of a thirsty pump, its mechanisms laboring slightly in the dry heat. These are the sounds of the house reacting to the external temperatures, its materials constantly expanding and contracting, breathing with the environment. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm families would try to predict the intensity of summer heat waves by listening to the prolonged or unusually loud chirping of specific insects during the night, believing their sounds were sensitive to atmospheric pressure changes. Even the cooling of the house at night brings its own subtle acoustic events. As the sun sets and temperatures drop, you might hear the gentle creak and groan of the house settling back into its cooler state. The timber contracting with soft sighs and pops. The faint drip of condensation from a cold window pane, a delicate, almost musical plink that punctuates the growing stillness. These are the sounds of the building itself, a living entity that responds to the daily and seasonal cycles of temperature. Its structural sounds a constant reminder of the elemental forces at play. One mainstream historical fact is that maintaining comfortable indoor temperatures in 19th century farmhouses was a constant challenge, requiring significant manual labor for heating and relying on natural ventilation for cooling. The absence of modern climate control systems means that your ear becomes incredibly attuned to these subtle temperature-induced sounds. You learn to interpret the language of the house, understanding the whispers of its expanding wood, the sighs of its contracting timbers, and the rhythmic crackle of its life-giving fire. These are not just background noises. They are signals telling you about the comfort or discomfort of your environment, forcing you to adjust your daily routines accordingly. The 19th century farmhouse was a symphony of subtle sounds driven by temperature change, a constant dialogue between the dwelling and its external environment. Every creak, every pop, every gentle hum contributed to a profound sense of connection to the elemental forces of nature. You are immersed in this acoustic landscape, listening to the delicate symphony of warming and cooling, realizing that even the most fleeting sounds held a profound depth of meaning and purpose in a bygone era. It makes you realize how much we take consistent temperature for granted now. Let's focus on the sounds of communication within a 19th century farmhouse, both spoken and unspoken. Subtle whispers and meaningful silences that formed the fabric of daily interaction. Imagine the low murmur of voices during a communal meal, a gentle hum of conversation that blends into the background, interspersed with the quiet clatter of dishes. Not loud arguments or boisterous laughter, but a steady, calm exchange, reflecting the close quarters and the respect for shared space. You might hear the soft cadence of a child's voice reciting a lesson, a deliberate, quiet articulation that speaks of learning and discipline. The gentle correction from a parent, a hushed whisper rather than a shout, ensuring attentiveness. Historians still argue about the typical volume and intensity of family conversations in 19th century farmhouses, whether the quiet environment fostered softer speech or if occasional boisterousness was common despite the acoustics. Beyond direct speech, many sounds conveyed information without words. The soft scrape of a chair being pulled out from a table, a gentle rasp that signals someone is preparing to join a group or begin a task. the distinct rustle of a particular apron, indicating someone is about to begin cooking. The rhythmic thud of a broom against the floor, a signal that cleaning is underway. These are the unspoken cues, the auditory shorthand that conveyed meaning and anticipated actions within the close-knit family unit. You learn to interpret these sounds, becoming highly attuned to the quiet language of the household. No cell phone notifications or instant messages. Just the subtle communication of daily life. The sounds of reading aloud were also common, creating a focal point for evening gatherings. The steady cadence of a voice narrating a story from a book or the Bible, a comforting, rhythmic sound that filled the room. The occasional soft sigh or murmur of agreement from listeners, their quiet engagement palpable. This was a communal experience where the spoken word, even when read, brought people together and shared knowledge or entertainment. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some farm families developed their own unique system of domestic bell signals or quiet whistles to communicate between different rooms or outbuildings, ensuring discreet coordination of tasks without loud shouting. The act of writing, too, held its own subtle sounds of communication. The soft scratch of a quill pen on parchment, a rhythmic rasp as letters were penned or accounts were kept. The gentle rustle of the paper itself, a dry whisper as a page was turned. These were the sounds of connecting with the wider world, of news being sent and received, bridging the isolation of rural life. One mainstream historical fact is that literacy rates varied in 19th century rural populations, but reading aloud and letter writing were important forms of communication and entertainment within farm households. Even the silence could be communicative. A sudden hush, a pause in the usual domestic sounds might signal a moment of attention, a pending decision, or a shared emotion. The quiet contemplation after a prayer, the unspoken understanding between family members after a shared glance. These are the sounds of unspoken bonds, of a deep level of connection forged through shared experience and mutual understanding. The 19th century farmhouse was a microcosm of subtle communication, a space where every sound, from a whispered word to a rustling garment, held meaning. You were immersed in this acoustic landscape, learning to interpret the delicate symphony of human interaction, realizing that even the quietest exchanges held a profound depth of purpose and connection in a bygone era. It makes you realize how much we rely on explicit, loud communication in our modern world, and how much we might miss in the silent language of subtle sound. As the final echoes of our journey through the 19th century farmhouse begin to fade, let's allow the subtle symphony of its life to gently recede into the quiet. The gentle sigh of old timbers, the rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock, the distant crow of the rooster at dawn. These sounds, once so vividly present, now soften into a comforting murmur in your memory. Feel the lingering warmth of the hearth, the subtle scent of wood smoke, and the profound peace of a world attuned to natural rhythms. There is no urgency here, no jarring modern noise to disrupt the gentle hum of history. The meticulous care, the quiet industry, the deep connection to the land, all were conveyed through these delicate auditory textures. Let the enduring spirit of self-sufficiency and communal quiet embrace you. As the last whispers of this bygone era drift away, like motes of dust dancing in a forgotten sunbeam, know that you have truly listened, truly experienced the profound quiet of a life lived by subtle sound. Your understanding has deepened, your senses have sharpened. Now, as the last faint sounds of the farmhouse softly close, let your own quiet journey begin. Drift gently, allowing the peaceful echoes of this historical symphony to lull you into a restful, profound sleep. Good night.